The email arrived at exactly 8:47 a.m., slipping into his phone like a quiet betrayal. Daniel had already been awake for hours, tying his son's shoelaces with fingers that still smelled faintly of burnt toast, promising him that today would be better than yesterday. He didn't open the email right away. Somewhere deep inside, he already knew what it would say. When he finally looked at the screen, standing alone in the elevator with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the words confirmed it with brutal simplicity. His employment was terminated, effective immediately. The elevator doors opened, and the office floor greeted him with its usual polished calm. Glass walls, muted colors, the smell of expensive coffee, it all felt unreal, like a place he no longer belonged. Daniel stepped out anyway, carrying the weight of a choice he'd made 3 weeks earlier. When a critical error in a major project threatened to destroy the company's biggest client relationship, he had known the mistake wasn't his. He had known exactly who caused it, but he also knew that person had a family too, and a fragile one at that. In a moment of quiet resolve, Daniel took the blame. He told himself it was the right thing to do. Integrity mattered. Someone had to stand up. Now, standing at his desk with a cardboard box handed to him by security, integrity felt painfully expensive. As he packed up framed drawings from his son, old notebooks, and a chipped mug that said "World's Okayest Dad," his chest tightened. Every object carried a memory of long nights, early mornings, and the stubborn hope that hard work would eventually lead to stability. Being a single father meant every decision echoed louder. There was no one else to lean on when things fell apart. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him with grief he barely had time to process, and a 6-year-old boy who needed him to be strong every single day. By the time Daniel reached the parking lot, rain had begun to fall. Not dramatic rain, just a steady, soaking drizzle that felt like the world quietly agreeing with his mood. He sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. His mind raced through unpaid bills, school fees, groceries, and the rent due in 2 weeks. He thought about the promise he'd made that morning. Today would be better. The irony stung. At home, he forced a smile when he picked up his son Noah from school. Noah ran into his arms, talking excitedly about a spelling test and a drawing he'd made just for him. Daniel listened, nodded, laughed at the right moments, and prayed his voice wouldn't crack. That night, after Noah fell asleep clutching his favorite stuffed bear, Daniel sat at the kitchen table in the dim light. Job boards open on his old laptop. Rejection emails piled up fast. Overqualified, underqualified. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Each message chipped away at his confidence. Days turned into weeks. The savings account shrank. Daniel sold his watch, then his old guitar. He skipped meals so Noah wouldn't notice there was less food. Some nights after Noah slept, Daniel allowed himself to feel it all. The anger, the exhaustion, the doubt. He wondered if honesty had been a mistake. If doing the right thing was just a story people told themselves to feel better about losing. One afternoon, as Daniel waited outside Noah's school, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost ignored it. Experience had taught him not to expect good news. But something made him answer. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and unexpected. It was the executive assistant from his former company, asking if he could come in the next morning. There was no explanation, no hint, just a request. That night, Daniel barely slept. His mind filled the silence with worst-case scenarios. Maybe they wanted paperwork signed. Maybe it was a formality. Maybe it was nothing at all. Still, he ironed his one good shirt and borrowed bus fare from a neighbor, because his car now sat unused with an empty tank. When he arrived at the office, everything felt the same, yet completely different. The same glass walls, the same quiet confidence in the air. He was escorted not to HR, but to the top floor. The CEO's floor. Daniel's heart pounded as he stood outside the large wooden door, wondering what place he had in a room like that anymore. Inside, the CEO stood by the window, looking out over the city. He was older than Daniel remembered, with lines on his face that spoke of long decisions and heavy responsibility. When he turned around, his eyes were sharp but not unkind. He gestured for Daniel to sit, but didn't say anything right away. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, the CEO spoke. He said he had reviewed the incident again. He said new information had come to light. He said he wanted to understand why Daniel had taken responsibility for something he didn't do. Daniel swallowed hard and told the truth. About the mistake. About the colleague. About choosing to protect someone else because he believed that leadership wasn't about survival, but about character. The CEO listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, his voice low and tired, he expected judgment. Instead, the CEO nodded slowly. He said something Daniel never expected to hear. He said the company needed more people like him, not fewer. He said the firing had been a mistake, born from speed and pressure, and that integrity was not a weakness, it was rare. Then the CEO said softly, almost like an afterthought, "Come with me." They walked down the hall together, past offices Daniel had never been in, until they reached a conference room overlooking the city. The CEO explained that he was forming a new internal division, one built on accountability and ethical leadership, and he wanted Daniel to help lead it. Not just a job offer, but a chance to shape something meaningful. The salary was higher than before. The hours were flexible. There was even support for working parents. Daniel felt something break open inside his chest. Not relief alone, but validation. The quiet confirmation that his suffering hadn't been pointless, that his son's drawings, his sacrifices, his honesty, they had led him here. When Daniel told Noah that evening, Noah hugged him tightly and said he knew his dad was a good man. Daniel realized then that this was the real promotion. Not the title, not the money, but becoming the kind of father his son could believe in. Months later, Daniel stood in the same office building, no longer invisible. He walked with purpose now, still humble, still tired sometimes, but stronger. He mentored others, spoke openly about mistakes, and made space for people who were struggling. He never forgot the weeks of defeat, because they kept him grounded. And if you're listening to this story right now, feeling like life has knocked you down unfairly, like doing the right thing costs you everything, remember this. Defeat is not the end of your story. Sometimes it's the quiet beginning of something greater than you imagined. Keep going. Stay honest. Stay kind. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that even at our lowest point, redemption is closer than we think.